Have you ever noticed a ringing in your ears after you ride? You might notice it at night right before you go to bed, or when you're in a quiet environment. If you have, you may be experiencing tinnitus. And it's a topic I don't really hear a lot of people talking about in the motorcycle community, yet it's something that can potentially affect someone's quality of life for their entire life. So let's talk about it. If you didn't know, tinnitus is a medical term for hearing noises inside your ears that aren't present in the environment around you. It's often called ringing in the ears, and the loudness can vary from person to person. And it can either get better or worse with time. So many riders I know mentioned having tinnitus, myself included, and according to medical data, this does affect up to 20% of the population. But given how undercovered I think this topic is in the motorcycle industry, where I think it's a huge deal, I suspect these numbers may actually be way higher than what's being reported. But okay, it's science time. The additional noise heard with tinnitus is thought to result from a background sensory signal produced by the cochlea in your ear, but it's not being effectively filtered out by the central auditory system in your brain. And from what I've read, tinnitus can happen for a number of different reasons. Most people think it's from hearing loss, which can happen when you're riding your motorcycle without wearing proper hearing protection, but studies show this isn't always the case. Hearing loss doesn't always lead to tinnitus, and patients with tinnitus don't always suffer from hearing loss. And this is the category of people I fall into. And I think what some of the newer riders to the sport may be experiencing, especially some of us younger ones, I realized I had tinnitus when it drove me nuts in my quiet bedroom at night, and this happened, I want to say, about 2 years after I started riding. So I went to an ENT. For those that don't know, an ENT is an ears, nose, and throat doctor. And I went there to see if I had any hearing loss. And the verdict was I didn't. My ears were perfectly fine. I went through the standard hearing test where they put you in that quiet little room and they played different tones at different frequencies in each of your ears to see if you can hear them, and I heard all of them. And I guess I wasn't really surprised at this result because I did wear earplugs on most of my rides. Like 95% of the time I was wearing earplugs. And I was pretty active in protecting my hearing while I was on the bike. So I didn't think it was due to hearing loss, but I was hoping that I would walk away with some explanation for the tinnitus. I never got one. But what I did get in the time since then was a doctorate degree in biomedical science. So I did what any curious scientist would do. I started Googling my symptoms, but on Google Scholar. Anyways, I started reading the scientific literature to see if I could figure out what was happening with me. What I came across was actually pretty interesting. So there's this type of tinnitus that's temporary. Like after you go to a loud concert or a club, your ears are probably ringing that night, but it gets better after a few hours or 1 to 2 days, and your hearing is kind of back to normal. So the same thing kind of happens when you're riding your motorcycle. The loud exhaust plus the combination of wind noise, it will temporarily damage your hearing. And that's actually not the problem. The problem is that we repeat this action. And when it comes to hearing loss and hearing damage, a lot of it is cumulative. So you'll damage your hearing, it'll recover, but not fully. You'll damage it again, it'll recover, but not fully. And it's that cumulative damage that adds up over time and leads to tinnitus that lasts for weeks, for months, for years. Now, the good news is that not all hearing damage is irreversible. For example, tinnitus can be caused by other things, like if you have excessive earwax buildup, or certain medications can even cause this, or certain heart conditions. There's a variety of different causes, and for example, if you get your earwax cleaned out or if you stop taking a medication, the tinnitus can go away. Doctors usually call that secondary tinnitus when there's an identifiable cause, and if you stop that, then it gets better. And then there's another category of tinnitus called primary tinnitus, and unfortunately, this is the kind of tinnitus that has no identifiable cause, and it's not entirely understood. But in the last few months, there's been a new hypothesis floating around. Basically, some scientists looked at 294 people in my type of situation where there was no hearing loss, but they still experienced tinnitus. And they wanted to see if there was some subtle change in the auditory nerves that wouldn't normally appear on a hearing test. Now, a normal hearing test typically looks at your hearing between a range of 250 to 8,000 hertz. And listen to this audiologist, he explains really good what a standard test doesn't include.
What a standard hearing test does not include is a finite measure of the cells of your cochlea and your hearing above 8,000 hertz. So for many individuals who have tinnitus, but their hearing test showed that they have normal hearing, when we have these more finite tests, we can determine that there is a subtle or a slight hearing loss at play.
And that's really important for this part of the story. Basically, what the study found is that damage to the cochlear nerve can occur even when sensory cells remain intact. And another study done a while back, before this one, tested this in guinea pigs. They exposed them to loud noises and then observed that while their hearing recovered from loud noise exposures within 2 weeks, the auditory nerve fibers in the ear were irreversibly damaged. And all that damage happened within hours post-exposure to that loud noise. Basically, what that means for standard hearing tests that we have today in clinic is that we may not be getting all types of hearing damage in that 250 to 8,000 hertz that we're testing in. Hearing damage might occur outside those ranges and we're not picking it up on these tests. Okay, science aside, what does this mean for us motorcycle riders? So if you take anyone and put them in a quiet enough environment, eventually they will experience some type of tinnitus. Everyone has some background level of tinnitus. And this really becomes apparent if you've ever been put in a sensory deprivation chamber. And those noises can actually become more prominent the more attention you give it. So in other words, don't talk about Fight Club. I thought that was really interesting because I did notice the more research I did into tinnitus and the more I thought about it, the louder I seemed to hear it because I was paying it more attention. But that's not all. Another thing motorcycle riders need to consider is that not wearing hearing protection is a guaranteed way to damage your hearing. If you're a rider that doesn't wear a helmet even, that's just like the worst offense because you're not even getting the protection from the wind buffeting that a helmet would provide you with, even though it's minimal and not sufficient. Earplugs will definitely help slow down this process of hearing loss, but here's the kicker. Most people, myself included, don't put earplugs in properly. If you're using these type of earplugs that are foam and squished down to a certain size and then expand in your ears, there's actually a proper way to insert them and you have to push them pretty far down your ear canal to get the proper protection out of them. I only realized the proper way to put these guys in when I saw Valentino Rossi licking his and then reaching around the back of his head and inserting it into his ear while pulling on his ear with the other hand. He basically did one of these. So this is how he inserted his earplugs in, by pulling his ear up and then like shoving it down there. I remember that was a wild moment for me because I'm like, what? Who puts earplugs in like that? And then I looked it up and that's the proper way to do it. That's the proper way to do it. Another problem I see, and again, myself included in this category, is riders not wearing hearing protection that has a high enough noise reduction rating. Meaning your earplugs filter out some noise, but not enough to bring you back down into the safe range. Depending on the type of motorcycle exhaust you have, how fast you're going, the helmet you have, and a whole host of other factors. When you're riding, you could be exposed to sound levels 110 decibels or higher, and you need to be somewhere around 80 or below to be in the safe range. So you need an earplug that can take you from really loud noises back down to 80, and if an earplug doesn't have a high enough noise reduction rating or it doesn't filter out in the right frequencies, then you are getting some hearing protection but not enough, especially if you're riding for a longer period of time. Future Lali here because I realized I forgot to mention something very important. An NRR rating of 33 doesn't mean it reduces 33 decibels of noise. The hearing protection provided with NRR 33 is calculated by taking the NRR rating 33 minus 7 and then dividing that by 2. So if you're at 100 decibels and wearing hearing protection of NRR 33, you're going to be around 87 decibels. I see a lot of people wearing the loop earplugs, which have been popularized by social media. I have a pair of those as well. And I don't think any pair except maybe their Quiet 2 have a high enough rating to bring down the noise reduction enough. The safest bet is to go with a pair of custom earplugs, which you can have made at a doctor's office. And for those of you that do have custom earplugs, let me know how that process went and how much they cost. I've also had some people mention that they wear earplugs with high enough noise reduction ratings, but then they end up filtering out a lot of traffic noise. Some people don't mind that, some riders do. So that may be one downside to these foam ones. These aren't very selective about the types of frequencies they block out. They just block out everything. Here are some of the earplugs I use and what my thoughts are on each one. Some of these were sent to me from Revzilla like 2 years ago, and some of these I purchased on my own. Alright, so these are basically the contenders that I've tried so far. I'll start with the Heroes Extreme earplugs. These guys are your plain, regular blue foam ones. They're comfortable, and because I get so many of them in this packet, I literally throw one in every single one of my jackets, and I just have them in there in case I don't have any other pair. I usually don't opt to go for these. They are good with the NRR rating. They do block out quite a bit of sound, but sometimes I feel like it's just a little bit too much, but otherwise they are pretty comfortable. These guys are from Revzilla. I do recommend these. These guys I believe are also from Revzilla. I hate these. They are not a vibe. And the NRR rating on these is 15, which I agree with. I feel like they block out no sound. Like, I put these on, I remember once, and I could still hear my TV in the background when the volume was like on 10. It was pretty bad. On top of that, they're really not comfortable because this is just a plastic piece. Like, it's not anything fancy. It's just this with a tiny little rubbery silicone thing, so it hurts my ears to ride with these. They have no give whatsoever. For some reason, you do want only an NRR of 15. You can also find these on Revzilla. They're pretty garbage. Don't get these. All right, these 3 pairs are all from Loop. They're different versions. These ones are the Quiet or the Quiet 2s. I got all my Loop earplugs about 3 years ago, I want to say. And in terms of comfort in my ear, I do think the Loops are the most comfortable. However, I don't think all of them reduce enough noise. These are, for example, I think they're like regular Experience set, and this is their Experience Pro. These ones are supposed to block out a bit more noise than these ones, and I do recommend that you get this insert, which actually makes them filter out a little bit more noise. Without this insert, they're pretty much useless. I think with this insert, they're like borderline okay. I do prefer these over the other ones just purely because of comfort reasons, but I'm not sure that their NRR rating is high enough, and also Loop, for some reason, is pretty shady about publishing their NRR ratings. Even in the past, when I first started wearing these, I asked them about it, and they didn't publish that info anywhere. This is basically an email I sent to them back in 2020 about this stuff, and now it's like 2024, so they've had 4 years to publish this data and still haven't, so that's like honestly really bad for them. So I won't recommend them because I think their official numbers are anything spectacular because they still haven't published the data, but they are comfortable and they do reduce some noise. It's kind of like a negative mark for Loop, but comfort-wise, I do think they are the most comfortable. This is another pair that you can get on Revzilla, the trackside ones. They also have a pretty high NRR rating of 32. And they're not too pricey. You do get 5 pairs. I think compared to the blue ones, these are a little bit less comfortable just because the foam is a little bit harder. But in terms of the amount of noise they block out, I really can't tell a difference between these two. So if you had to pick between the two, I would go with these guys just because you get more pairs, unless you really care about having a carrying case. One last pair that you can also get on Revzilla, these I have mixed feelings about. I do like the fact that they actually publish like all their data for you to look at here, so you can pause if you really want to take a look at this. And they do take the time to educate you a little bit about attenuation data, which I do appreciate. These guys are supposed to block out frequencies, basically, that you're exposed to when you're on a motorcycle. You only get 1 pair of earplugs with these guys. Comfort-wise, I think these are mid. I have pretty small ears, so these do bother me after a certain amount of time, but they're not the most uncomfortable thing in the world. Just for some reason, all these earplugs that have this like little stick jutting out the back are not the most comfortable to my ear shape. When Revzilla sent these to me, they retail for about $30, so that's pretty pricey for 1 pair, but these ones are supposed to be for motorsports. I really don't think that any type of earplug is one size fits all, so you do need to kind of trial until you find something that works for you, or straight up just go get a custom one. Protecting your hearing is not enough. If you wear glasses like I do while you're riding, then today's video sponsor has the perfect, comfortable solution for you. This pair of glasses sucks for riding, which is why for the past 2 years I've been using Flying Eyes. Flying Eyes is my favorite sponsor because Flying Eyes makes glasses that are designed for motorcycle riders. Their glasses have thin and super flexible frames. I don't get any pressure points when I wear these glasses. And they fit all of my helmets super easily. They also sell these magnetic clip-ons that can turn my regular prescription glasses into sunglasses. And if you have vision insurance, you can submit an out-of-network claim to your insurance provider and get even more money back. They also sell sunglasses on their own if you don't need prescription lenses. Check out the pairs I love and wear at flyingeyes.com/Lali and use code Lali at checkout to get 10% off. And with that, I will see you all in the next one.